It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 5 films of October 5th, 2007. Excuse me. And on today's show, we have a remake of a 1970s comedy directed by the Farrelly brothers and starring Ben Stiller in the main role. We also have one of the many attempts to try to create the next Harry Potter. We have another dance movie that comes out that's trying to be the next Stomp the Yard or You Got Served. George Clooney stars in an Oscar winner, and Blade Runner gets re-released with the final cut. Is it the best version? We'll delve into that as we go along here, but before we get to any of those, let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, which is, of course, the Farrelly brothers remake of The Heartbreak Kid.
She's an incredible girl.
For every guy
You may kiss the bride.
who's ever made a big mistake.
My mom finally arrived.
It's the same dress I wore on my wedding day.
Same designer?
No, the very same dress.
From the guys who brought you There's Something About Mary.
What's the matter, Eddie, you little girl?
How's Lila? It's like a switch flip.
She's loco.
She burned my passport.
I can sneak you back into California.
The Heartbreak Kid. Rated R.
Sort of this is the film that begins the downward trend of the Farrelly brothers to me, because they had been making some good movies up to that point. You know, There's Something About Mary, Fever Pitch, Stuck on You, Shallow Hal. Really good movies all across the board. But this was their first real film that they had done that was just a complete and utter dud of a movie. And it's kind of hard not to see why here. Ben Stiller stars as a sports shop owner who's ending up in a rushed marriage with a woman played by Malin Ackerman and meets a true love interest played by Michelle Monaghan during a trip to Mexico. And yeah, part of the problem with the movie is that the film was already, this is based off of a Neil Simon story that was already made into a great movie in 1972, and the Farrelly brothers came in and said, let's do that, except let's take out the smart, funny comedy and replace it with nothing but gross-out humor and fart jokes and poop jokes. That's literally the crux of this entire movie. And I like Malin Ackerman. I like her. I've liked her in a lot of things. I like her in Watchmen. I've seen her in a lot of movies where she's actually been really good. Ben Stiller can be very funny, but man, everybody in this movie is trying their hardest to hold it together, but there's just nothing there that makes it worth it in the end. It's just nothing but a lousy, gross-out comedy with the cheapest jokes you can imagine. I mean, these are jokes that are not even silly bad. These are just bad jokes that are just not funny whatsoever. And there's just nothing about them that makes it worth it in the end. It's a really terrible movie that is just such a colossal failure on so many levels. With the possibilities definitely there on screen, but unfortunately, there's just nothing else there that makes it worth it. And it's mostly in the scripting department, because the Farrelly brothers clearly just wanted to make another gross-out movie. And this is nothing but gross-out humor, but you can make gross-out humor work if it's done well. I mean, these are the guys that perfected it in Dumb and Dumber. But in this case, like, it really feels like they lost their craft and were just so desperate to create the next Dumb and Dumber style hit, and they just really fell apart at the seams with this film. This is such a terrible movie, man. It's a movie that I had a lot of high hopes going into it, watching it, and I was really let down by it in the end. Just such a terrible movie. What an absolute waste of time. Just a really bad movie all across the board. I really didn't like it, and yeah, it still has not held up well. So yeah, a hard skip on The Heartbreak Kid. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is The Seeker, The Dark is Rising.
Where am I?
You will, the Sign Seeker, the chosen warrior to fight the dark.
The power of the light was divided and hidden in the form of 6 signs.
The signs will call to you. You will step through time, gather them, and gain the power of the light.
I'm supposed to save the world?
You have powers, Will. You can command fire.
Light! Awesome.
Move objects. Summon great strength.
Can I fly?
What?
You know, whoosh. I found the sign!
I'm coming with you, Will.
Trust your powers.
dark is rising.
Even the smallest light shines in the darkness.
How about no? How about I won't join your quest? How about you make actually a good movie and not just make a film that is being made solely because Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings did it and they were successful and the Narnia films were successful? Because that's exactly why this movie got made. They wanted to make their own Harry Potter style franchise, and it just wasn't happening with what they were putting out at 20th Century Fox at the time. Aragon was their first bad example of it, but this is definitely much worse than that. You have Will Stanton, played by Alexander Ludwig, who on his 14th birthday finds out that he is the last of a group of warriors called the Light, who have spent their lives fighting against evil, the dark. Clever, right? Will travels through time to track down the 6 signs that will enable him to confront the evil forces, the Dark, personified by the writer, played by Christopher Eccleston, who was just coming off of Doctor Who. He has a mentor played by Ian McShane, and that's really about it. Everything that you could ever imagine in a fantasy film based off of a series of children's novels, it's in this movie, and it's not creative or well done whatsoever. It's completely lifeless. There's literally nothing of value to this film whatsoever, and at no point is there any thrills, any excitement, anything engaging. Just nothing happens in this movie. Like, at least Aragon was at least trying to do something unique and different with it, even though it didn't work. But man, this film, it's just the most, let's copy every other big budget fantasy film, and let's see if we can do the same thing with something that not a lot of people know of here. And yeah, these Darkest Rising books don't have the same loyalty fan base that Harry Potter did, or Lord of the Rings, or the Chronicles of Narnia, or even the Hunger Games later on down the road. Nothing in this movie makes me want to look at these books. Nothing about this movie makes me want to get excited for any potential sequels they were working on here. All it wants me to do is just make me completely forget about it and never see it ever again. Like, yeah, bottom line, you can avoid the sequel, The Darkest Rising. Thank God that this did not become a franchise, because, yeah, I don't think I could stand it after this first film, so. Can we get better with any of these movies? Why don't we just go to our next movie here, and that is Feel the Noise. Let's see if we can turn the tide.
Do you guys want to come to a show tonight?
Let's go.
Bye.
That's how y'all doing it in a Rico? That's how we do it. She got that spice, son. For real.
From producer Jennifer Lopez.
You want to dance?
Y'all don't dance. I'll show you.
Feel the moves. Feel the beat. Feel the rhythm. Feel the noise.
I don't want to feel anything with you. I think that gives you an indication how I feel about this movie. But yeah, this is another bad film. After a run-in with local thugs to raise money for a chance at a record deal, a Harlem-born aspiring rapper of an African-American mother and Puerto Rican father, Rob, flees to Puerto Rico seeking refuge with a Puerto Rican father he never knew and finding his salvation in reggaeton, a spicy blend of hip-hop, reggae, and Latin beats. Puerto Rico, the spiritual home of reggaeton, inspires Rob and his stepbrother, Javi, to pursue their dreams of becoming reggaeton stars. Together with a dancer named Cece, played by Zule Heneo from Vantage Point, they learn what it means to stay true to themselves and each other while overcoming obstacles in love, greed, and pride, all culminating in an explosive performance at New York's Puerto Rican Day Parade. So it's basically Step Up for the Puerto Rican audiences. I mean, that's literally what the movie is. And unfortunately, it does not have the same ebb and flow as Step Up. It does not have any of the same incredible dance sequences as the Step Up movies do. Because the Step Up movies, at least starting with the next film, become more memorable because of the unique choreography and dancing sequences. This is none of that. This just feels like a movie where they're just really just trying to copy the success of the first Step Up, the first Stomp the Yard, You Got Served, those type of movies where there's no real story going on here. All these movies are trying to show off these sexy teenagers and these incredible dance moves and what they think is incredible dance moves, because yeah, there's nothing incredible about any of these dance moves whatsoever, and these characters have nothing of value to them whatsoever. There's nothing intriguing about them whatsoever. Again, another misfire of a film with nobody I care about and no real reason to see the movie. And yeah, what more can you say? Feel the Noise. You'd be better off feeling something else without even having to get this movie in your mindset. So yeah, avoid this one like the plague. Can we get one good movie this weekend to finally turn the tide around? Well, the next film did win some Oscars. Let's talk about Michael Clayton.
Clayton is back in theaters, and now it has been nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
What if Arthur was onto something?
Best Screenplay and Director, Tony Gilroy.
We have a situation.
Best Actor, George Clooney.
They're gonna cut you off the knees.
Best Supporting Actor, Tom Wilkinson.
They killed them, Michael.
Best Supporting Actress, Tilda Swinton. Critics are hailing it as the best picture of the year.
Do I look like I'm negotiating?
Michael Clayton, rated R, now playing in theaters, coming to DVD February 19th.
We finally found a good movie, ladies and gentlemen. It only took us 3 bad movies to get to it, but yeah, this movie's pretty awesome. George Clooney plays Michael Clayton, a high-priced law firm fixer who leaves a late-night poker game, gets a call to drive to Westchester, and watches his car blow up as he's taking an impromptu dawn walk across the field. Flashback 4 days, he owns a loan shark to cover his brother's debts. Michael's own gambling habits have left him virtually broke. His law firm is negotiating a high-stakes merger, and his firm's 6-year defense of a conglomerate's pesticide use is at risk when one of the firm's top litigators goes off his meds and puts the case in jeopardy. While Michael is trying to fix things, someone decides to kill him. Who? Meanwhile, his son summarizes the plot of a dark fantasy novel. Interesting little tidbit there. That's from IMDb. That's not me, but yeah, like I said, Michael Clayton is actually a pretty awesome movie. It's George Clooney doing what George Clooney does best. You know, he's one of our great actors. He's got a great cast working around him. Tom Wilkinson, Tilda Swinton, which actually won her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Sidney Pollack at one of his last movies he did before he passed away the following year. Michael O'Keefe, who I haven't seen in a long time, maybe not since Caddyshack. But he's in this movie too, playing the other attorney at the firm that they're at, and he's actually really good too. Everybody in here plays their parts very well. It's an engaging storyline here. It's a mystery that does keep you interested in what the direction is going to go with this movie in general. And Tony Gilroy definitely shows what he can do as a director on this film. This was his first film as a director, but then he followed it up with The Bourne Legacy, which that movie was already bad on its own levels. But we'll get to that one eventually. But here's what you can do with a here he gets to show what he can do as a director as a whole with this film. It's his first time directing a film, and he does a really good job at it too. It's a really impressively made film. It's a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. George Clooney once again is really good in this film, giving another strong performance. It's a terrific film. It's a film I highly recommend. It's one of the year's best films, easily. Michael Clayton, definitely check it out. And so with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here, which is a classic movie being re-released in theaters for its 25th anniversary, and that is Blade Runner, The Final Cut.
I'm Rachel.
Deckard.
Have you ever retired a human by mistake?
No.
I need the old Blade Runner. This is a bad one.
If only you could see what I've seen.
More human than human is our motto.
What if I go north? Would you come after me?
I know you would, but somebody would.
Time to die.
Too bad she won't live. Will you help us? What seems to be the problem? I want more life.
An experiment. Nothing more. Nothing more. More human than human is our motto.
Yeah, just in case you need to know, Rutger Hauer's Roy Batty is still scary as all hell. I think that was the purpose of that trailer in that movie. Rutger Hauer is still amazing in this movie. But I digress. This is Ridley Scott's final cut of Blade Runner, released 25 years after the original film, but this was actually a production that began all the way back at the start of the decade. What had happened was that Scott found time in mid-2000 to help put together a final and definitive version of the film, which was only partially completed in mid-2001 before legal and financial issues forced a halt to the work. And then 5 years later, Warner Brothers finally secured the distribution rights to the film, and so there would be 3 different stages to how they would re-release this film. There would be a digitally remastered single-disc version, there would be a final cut version of the film that was released in theaters this weekend, and then a multi-disc 5 massive box set, shaped like a briefcase, where you can get all these different versions on this one box set. And I've seen pictures of it. It was really cool. I've never gotten around to seeing it in the stores, and even when I have, on brief occasions. I always remember it being uber expensive. But you're probably wondering to yourself, what exactly makes this version of Blade Runner, the final cut, seem more different than the other versions? Well, in this particular version, they add the original full-length version of the Unicorn Dream, which had never been in any other version of the film before. That's been restored in here. All the additional violence and alternate edits from the international cut have also been inserted as well, amongst other things as well. And to be honest, it's not a bad cut of it per se. But I mean, it definitely is when I look at this movie and see that it is the version that Ridley Scott had completely control over it. I mean, it's a good version of it. I'm not gonna say it's the best version of it per se. I would honestly say maybe the '92 director's cut version of it is a little bit better. But it is interesting to see all these different versions of this movie and how this film went from being an underperforming film back in the day because they added this narration that was completely pointless to the original film, and that's why people kind of stepped away from it. But we've had all these different versions of the film, and the results have spoken for themselves on how the longevity of this series has gone, because now we've had a Blade Runner 2049 sequel, a Blade Runner sequel in 2049. There's a TV series in the works as well, and but yeah, this is a film that I think is very well done. I don't think it's per se the best version of Blade Runner. I still think the 92 version is the slightly better version, but it's still a really good version. And this is the version, like I said, it has Ridley Scott's name on it. This is his puppy all across the board here. And this is the version that Warner Brothers said, okay, we'll let you do whatever you want to do with this, because we know you're going to deliver a good work here. And yeah, it's a very strong version of it. Is it the best version of it? I personally don't think so, but it's not to say it's a bad version by any means necessary. And if someone was to tell me that this was the original version that Ridley Scott had in mind, I would certainly believe it. But regardless, Blade Runner is still a classic movie, and whatever version you watched, either this last version or the one before it, you're still getting a really damn good movie out of it, regardless of which version you watch. And yeah, it's a terrific film all across the board, and one that I really don't have anything more to say about it, except, yeah, it's a really good movie, no matter which version you look at it. And so, with all of that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll take a look at 5 more movies, including Tyler Perry's latest movie, Why Did I Get Married? We also have Joaquin Phoenix and Mark Wahlberg starring in We Own the Night. Cate Blanchett returning as Queen Elizabeth in a sequel that many could say is absolutely entirely pointless, but Elizabeth the Golden Age. We also have Ryan Gosling in Craig Gillespie's official directorial debut, a second directorial effort after Mr. Woodcock, Lars and the Real Girl, and also Jude Law and Michael Caine in the remake of Sleuth, which starred Michael Caine in that particular version. So, we'll take a look at those 5 movies coming up on the next show. That'll be tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell so you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. With all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.